All right, guys, I have one more topic that I want to touch on before we get out of here. And that is this story that was actually sent to me by Peter Pischke over on Twitter. And it's basically a story about how most entertainment news sites are on their way to basically dying out. And this was an interview that Clownfish TV did with the CEO, former CEO and founder of Cinema Blend and current CEO of Giant Robot. And I don't know how many of you guys actually bothered to read through this thing, but it was actually kind of like an interesting interview where, Giant Frickin' Robot's not exactly the bastion of journalistic integrity that this guy makes it out to be. But he basically said that the reason that a lot of these sites are kind of like shutting down or like look to be going out of business come 2024 is that it's not because they've gone woke. It's not because their stories are bad or written by AI or whatever. It's because the major tech platforms like Facebook and Google are throttling traffic to these sites, where basically these sites used to get most of their traffic from sharing news stories on Google, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. And Google and Facebook have taken steps to kind of try to keep everything in-house, which makes it hard for a lot of these big sites and even independent sites to actually get the eyeballs they need to make ad revenue and all this other stuff. And so basically, most news sites are going to be broke by mid-2024, according to this guy, Josh Tyler, who was the founder of Cinema Blend and Giant Frickin' Robot. And I just thought it was interesting. Basically, Robert, a lot of these sites kind of like trade off of rage bait, clickbait, stuff like that, unfounded rumors. And the idea that they're going to be out of business by mid next year is kind of interesting to me, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up reading the entertainment press, like Variety and Hollywood Reporter. I lived on that stuff, and a lot of this entertainment reporting has obviously moved over to the internet, where unfortunately with all news, you get a lot more analysis. You have people like what we're doing right now, having 2-hour-long discussions, delving really into issues. But I think the real problem is that entertainment news just isn't, we don't have celebrities anymore, not like we used to. Mm-hmm. So celebrity news has sort of died on the vine. Everybody who's marrying who's dating whom. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but a lot of that is just, when you can talk to your favorite celebrity on Twitter or read, it's all of the mystique has gone away. We know too much about everything these days. So where is the value in entertainment news reporting across the board? There's no, I mean, we pay attention to it, but most people, there's no reason to anymore. Movie stars used to be sort of American royalty, and all of that has fallen by the wayside. We don't even have, like, who are our movie stars under 35?
Yeah, so I blame social media for that.
Well, yeah, but
they used to be prepackaged products that the studios sold to us, basically. So we saw them as movie stars, and now they're not packaged anymore. We have too much access to them.
Yeah, and also the entertainment itself is fractured. It used to be that everybody, occasionally we'll have a Barbenheimer thing happen, but for the most part, between everybody doing different things and liking different things, I mean, name the top 5 rock acts in the world today.
Oh, no, that's not.
I mean, 10 years ago you could, 20 years ago certainly, 30 years ago, all of our entertainment is so fractured that entertainment news doesn't have one focus anymore that everybody wants to know about. And I think it was sort of an inevitable evolution of where we are culturally. But entertainment news used to rely on that desire to know about celebrities in any, whether it was movies, TV, rock and roll, whatever. We don't have any of that anymore.
Well, now that the mainstream entertainment news or media, it's very obvious that they're not really fans. They don't really have the passion and the knowledge that a basic YouTuber can have. And so when you can go get a much better, maybe not highly as produced as, but a much better opinion from someone who's actually passionate about what they're talking about, versus some guy who's reading off a teleprompter, it's just There's no comparison, which is probably why
There's-
YouTube is doing better.
There's no such thing as mainstream media anymore. I don't see it. You know, when I do go through and the TV, I don't stop on any of them, and then I end up turning the TV off. What I do is like everybody else. I come over to YouTube, or I hit that app, and I watch shows like what we're doing, or I watch the podcast, or I watch, Robert or Dave or Odin or any of the other multiple people out there on YouTube that do their own entertaining shows and spin on things. It's a very just the entertainment world is shifting,
Totally.
and especially now with the strikes going on, they better be careful, or they're not going to have anybody to entertain when they get done with all this stuff, because they're all going to be watching our shows because you know what I mean. It's just it's a very strange world now. It's like you were saying, I couldn't tell you anybody in the top 10 music charts right now. Growing up, I could have told you every week. We had Dick Clark, we had Casey Kasem's top 40, we had American Bandstand, we had all that kind of stuff. That was where you went to see what was cool. You know what I mean? I couldn't tell you.
MTV's 120 minutes.
Yeah, Headbangers Ball. That was my jam. That kind of stuff. But it's that stuff doesn't exist now.
During the pandemic, there's I don't know if you guys know this channel. It's on YouTube. The Professor of Rock. He was a Midwestern music journalist. He started his YouTube channel. Always had good production. Always had some decent money behind him. But when he started, he had very few subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Now he interviews. It's a fantastic channel. I used to religiously read like Spin and Rolling Stone magazine, which are almost unreadable now. Rolling Stone, especially. The Professor of Rock interviews everybody you'd ever want to hear from. Long sit-down interviews. He brings his vast knowledge. And I look at channels like this. Here was a guy who was an impassioned music lover, music journalist, and now he has his own YouTube channel. He's bringing all of that institutional knowledge as a fan that he got himself. And now he's sitting down and interviewing all of the significant people that were part of your favorite music growing up.
Yeah.
And it's like, for a long period of time, like he'll sit down for an hour and do an interview. That's where, why am I going to read some music rag about rock and roll when I can sit down and watch the Professor of Rock, somebody who's got it in his bones, on YouTube for free?
If you had told me 20 years ago that I was going to be on our little podcast, and I was going to be in a conversation interviewing Rodney McKay and Colonel Shepard from Stargate Atlantis, I would have told you you're out of your mind. That's not going to happen. And that's exactly what we do. We've done
I felt that way about Daniel Davis. When he was on our
wild.
show, I lost my mind.
So,
I want to throw this to Odin, because Odin, I think one of the biggest issues with entertainment news sites as they stand now is nobody freaking believes them. Right? There's so much fake news. There's so much political spin. There's so much they want to be ingratiated to the studios so that they can get access to like premieres and swag and stuff like that. That nobody puts too much faith in what they say. Like, I kind of joked with Brian that giant freaking robot. You go there to get fake news about the entertainment industry for the most part, because
it's a great website if you don't know anything. You're like, they're making a new this, and this pretty.
Is that where Grace Randolph gets her scoops from?
It must be
probably. Yeah. But Odin, there is a big credibility problem with modern day entertainment sites, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I was going to add to the discussion, saying I think the two major issues that have really caused the downfall, especially of these social commentary or cultural commentary channels and websites, are two things. One, the injection of politics. This kind of goes into what we said before. Now we have so much access to everybody. Beforehand, the only time you would ever really hear about somebody is when they were selling their movie or when they were selling their show, right? The interviews that they would do. And typically those interviews would stay on point, right? They would stay focused on that. But now that we have access to everything, well, now not only the people delving into things that are not their show and not the content that people typically want to hear from them about, but now it's also their individual politics. And so the trades and all these other places start to pick up with that too and start to run with that as well. So I think the injection of politics has been a huge portion and huge part of that. But then also kind of going back to what you said too, authenticity is also the major thing, right? People are drawn to those that they honestly believe are authentic, the ones that they think are not only just telling them the truth, but also that they have some idea of what they're talking about. And what we found especially is there's been a huge rise of people who have been gaining in authenticity because they're just more real, right? Nowadays, there's almost a difference between people who are just seem a lot more real, down to earth, understanding all the things going on, and then those that are in like the ivory tower of whether it's called mainstream media or legacy media. And so I think that separation has really caused also this rift, which is leading to a lot of these companies that are, I totally believe that when he says in that article that they're going to be going out of business, because I think you've already seen a lot of media companies going out of business in the political sphere. And I would not be surprised if culturally you see something very similar too.
Yeah. And Dave, that brings us to this idea that real news sites hire staff, they go out, they chase down stories, they try to find stuff that's like trending and breaking and things like that. Whereas shows like ours, like we're just commenting on stuff that's already in the news. So the legitimacy of a lot of these entertainment news sites is what this article that I was referencing was about. But do we really need stuff like that nowadays? Like we can, like there's so many YouTubers out there who have sources that these articles kind of like tap into, and most of these articles are basically quoting stuff that's already coming from independent YouTubers and stuff like that. So you have this independent journalism aspect, which in a lot of ways is much fairer and more legitimate than a lot of these like quote unquote mainstream sites. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I used to be a tech journalist, and I remember many moons ago being invited to a conference by a company who had only just the previous year, they didn't want to invite any YouTubers. This is going back maybe 6-7 years ago. And that particular year in question, they decided, no, we're opening up now to these, because they realized the value of the YouTube influencer or whatever, which is a term I don't like, to be perfectly honest, influencer. But I'm really glad that YouTube commentary, YouTubers in general, endured 2017, particularly I think it was March 2017, because it was a particularly dark time for content creators on making use of the AdSense network. I mean, we can talk about the demonetization thing, unfortunately, that Brian and Shane have endured, I think, unfairly recently. But this adpocalypse that happened, I honestly believe, at the time I believed it more strongly even now, was designed to try to disrupt this new economic model that had emerged from technologies like social media, whereby it was possible for content creators like ourselves to make a living, to make this content, because obviously if you're doing something professionally, you're going to, number one, you're going to do more of it. Number two, you're going to do it better. And I think there was a real sense, particularly after that election as well, that the mainstream media had been discredited. And I suppose this is now we're seeing it. We saw it with the news media. Now we're seeing it with the entertainment media, but it's much the same thing. That we're seeing the same biases there that maybe weren't quite so evident a number of years ago. And so it's shifting. It just simply wasn't possible for people such as ourselves to sit around and do something. Well, you could do it, but there wasn't any kind of financial incentive. And now there is. And I think that has completely shifted. I wouldn't say necessarily the balance of power. The same corporations are still ultimately in charge. But from an entertainment perspective, people are seeking things. They're seeking their content elsewhere. They want these deep dives. And I think as well, for the particular genre that we operate in, I've always thought that, with science fiction, entertainment, and pop culture, it is an audience. The best people who are writing it, they're dreamers. The audience are dreamers. People want to engage with people who think like they do, and they want to think deeply about these things. And we spend a lot of time with this. And so people are getting that from us.
Yeah,
Brian,
I said the same thing, by the way, about I said this exactly back when the adpocalypse happened. It happened coincidentally because a mainstream journalist didn't like what Steven Crowder said, and it was all this big straw man thing that sort of sparked that catalyst. That was a catalyst for that, and I just find it really odd that it was the mainstream that sparked the catalyst for disrupting the financial flow to the competition.
But wasn't it PewDiePie and Wall Street Journal?
That was afterwards, which added to it. I love that, by the way. PewDiePie said, "You take a shot at the king, you best not miss," because they failed when they tried to take out PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Brian, real quick, just to wrap things up here, you and Shane actually tried launching like your own kind of like news site, and you got to see firsthand how difficult it is.
So hard.
Yeah, and compared to a site like Giant Freaking Robot, where it just seems like they just take whatever rumors out there from the YouTube sphere and spin like a 500-word article about it and pretend that it's coming from a reliable source. Do you really think that by the middle of next year we're going to see a lot of these sites disappear?
I do actually. I don't, maybe not disappear. I think they'll probably some of them will probably join up. I think they'll become part of like a network or something, where they'll promote their own things within each other. When we started Honest Pop Culture, that's the news site. We haven't updated in a while because it's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work to actually write good, not regurgitated content. And we did for a while, and work got really busy, and we just have to focus on things that are going to make money. And that website's not going to make any money for a very long time. And it was hard to get ranked. I was a web designer in my past life, and I'm very good at understanding the algorithm and sort of gaming the system. And I gamed the crap out of that system for this website. And even then, the system has changed to the point where I don't know how it's actually pulling or how it's favoring these websites, but there are websites that are favored specifically, whether they're using the correct, SEO tactics, keywords, etc., or even if they're not. There can be a website that only has a headline and a link to some Variety article that is somehow being pushed up by Google, and I can't explain it. So when I realized that it would be this extreme, 2-year-long grind just to get on the map, we sort of put it on the back burner because it's such a hard thing. When it comes to these websites, I do believe that because it's harder to make money now because of Google and what they're doing, I think that we're going to see like a combination of websites. We're going to see like fandom. I think it's called fandom.com, whatever, where they sort of coalesce and they become a network of each other, and they promote their internal websites. We're going to see a return to that. We saw that back in probably the early 2000s, 2010s. There was a meta, I call it the news meta, for a while, where a lot of websites were like a network of websites, and then they broke up again when Google News and Facebook News and like Reader and all these other websites, these what companies came out that were better at disseminating the information. But we're going to see that again. We're going to see these websites become networks or sister sites of each other. That's what, or those shut down. One of the two.
We're going to have the salty popcast.
Yeah, salty podcast, Dave Cullen Burnett work. You know what I mean? And not leaving Odin out, but like, yeah, we'll have like a YouTube union,
Unionized.
Let's not go there again. Go for a long time.
I'm going on strike already.
I knew it.
All right,
I knew it. Rob would be the scab.
Hey guys, if you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and comment below on your favorite video as well. That goes a long way with helping us boost our channel and get out there in front of more people, and it lets YouTube know that we're doing something right. And if you want to catch us live, we go live 2 times a week, once on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time and on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. So join us there in the chat. We will see you on the live stream. Stay salty.